Hi, Bill.
Hello.
How are you?
Pretty good.
Good.
Hey, I got to tell you that I found the long lost picture of the class of 1965.
Really?
I found a picture um, that was appeared in the 1965 recorder
Wow.
that had you, Frank, and Larry all in one picture.
Wow.
And I'll send it on to you.
That's pretty
Um,
good.
it was kind of interesting. I would kept looking around for anything where the three of you were there. You didn't have one of the classic class pictures, did you? Just because of
Oh, they
their.
never put one up. I thought that was, some they even combined, but we never got anything. I thought that was kind of a slap in the face, personally. Well, anyways, that's life gone by, but
Whoop! I hope I didn't lose you there.
I hope Paul's good.
Oh, hang on. I'm okay. I was trying to make the screen to cover the whole.
Oh, he looks pretty good.
Hey, Paul.
Ave,
Yeah, yeah,
good.
yeah, they fixed me up.
Guess so. Your feet are on the ground instead of in the air. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Since last time. Good for you.
Yep. It was a good recovery period.
Good.
Here
I'm doing
comes-
cardiac rehab now, but
Okay. You look pretty good for me. Your color is good in your face, what I see.
Mhm.
So,
There's Paul Greenwald, right? Also
Correct.
known as Betsy.
Yeah, well, you know who rules the roost here, don't you?
she carries the flag.
Yep, right there.
There you go.
Oh,
And there's the
Oh,
famous
well.
Albert's iPad.
Yeah.
We'll see who turns up today. I heard
Mhm.
from Pete Garthe that he will join us a little bit later on. He had to drop off the family to, or some grandkids off to some event. And who else did I hear from? Oh, Frank Unger said he had some rehearsal for,
Choir.
yeah.
He's pretty active in it. They have a pretty good group. So,
2 hours on your marks. Get
Williamson,
set.
Mighty Mike.
I have no idea what it's supposed to look like.
David M.I.
You know, this is like beyond me.
It's Phil.
Actually, great. This is really musical dance. What's on there? Anything?
It's the semi-final. We should be pushing it. It's a really delicate pastry. It's a short crust, but it has brown almonds in it, so it's really tender. The chocolate mousse actually has whisk meringue in it to make it a bit juicy. And then when it's set, it's decorated with whipped cream, raspberries, and little tempered chocolate disc. And goldie.
I thought it was difficult.
It's not exactly.
Keep going. Let's keep going and
It's got a nutty flavour to it. It's delicious.
oh, that's Wahmhoff there. Okay.
The raspberries quite strong.
Hi, Mike.
Say
hi.
Hi, honey.
Hello.
Hello, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah, that's me.
Good.
You look happier now.
Well, the procedure of getting this up here, I just don't practice it enough, you know. I'm just going step by step, but I got here. So
Good. That's the best bet.
So, Dick, how you been?
I've been well, thank you. I even went by
Okay.
your town one night, so.
Al, hey, how are you?
Wow, that truly is fun. Like, yeah, I've been first for 2 technicals in a row. I would really like to get the first. That would be different.
Delbert, you got it right there. Saw your Christmas tree and everything.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. That's,
Is ready.
There we go.
So it's easy to handle.
Who's got the sound going on in the room somewhere?
I think I remember how to make it.
Donna, can you turn that down a little bit?
Okay, there we go.
I'm guessing it's going to be pretty small attendance tonight. Just okay.
Go all the way from Florida.
Can you turn yours down now?
I think so.
Hey, Bill.
How you doing? How you doing?
So far,
Hey, Bill.
everybody that has shown up is doing well, I guess.
Paul's back on his feet. That's a really good sign. So
Yeah.
Well, why don't we officially call this meeting to order, such as it is? So if you can't hear me in the back, raise your hand. I still remember that. It must have been our first year of the retreat when whoever was leading that said that, and a few hands went back up in the back of the chapel. That's an old preacher joke, I guess. I don't really have a whole lot to report. I did hear, I'm just drawing a blank on his name, Tom, that lives right there near the
Tom Dalton.
Yeah, Tom Dalton, right. He just sent me a message yesterday or so, said there's no sign of any new activity on the grounds back there, so he kind of keeps an eye on what's taking place back there. One thing was he sent me a message about how to actually check on the ownership of the property there. And the last time we talked, I didn't have the correct information about who owns that chunk of land where they're proposing to put the housing up there, and the piece of land that extends up to behind the convent where Bethany Christian Services is planning to put in a connection from the convent over to the old St. Henry's Hall. It turns out that chunk of land is currently owned by the development company that's been behind the whole development activity and construction activity on the entire seminary grounds. So apparently, I'm just guessing in there that once they reach a stage where they're ready to turn it over to the new owners, that's when the Pinnacle Development drops out of the scene in terms of ownership. Does that sound right to you, Paul? You're the ones that's been Greenwald.
Yeah, I'm no longer on the planning commission, so I can't tell you anything currently, but the plan that was approved by the planning commission called for the property to be eventually subdivided into 3 separate plots with 3 separate and distinct owners.
Oh, okay.
You would have a piece of it. I can't remember what the name of the outfit is that runs the old main building as apartments. And then there was another social service agency that was going to basically take over the southern 2/3, where they're going to establish about 40 units of low-cost housing. Now, my understanding of it, the last thing I heard was that a lot of this is all hanging fire because of waiting for the state to give them certain grants that they've applied for, which would allow for the sale and construction. My experience on these things with the planning commission is a lot of these things will take 3-4 years to get the financing put together once they get the general approval, and then they have to come back to the planning commission for a final site approval. So I would not expect to see an awful lot going on there, particularly with this economy.
Yeah, that's Dwelling Place is the name of the
Yeah.
Yeah,
they also have some places downtown in the Hartside district. They're basically run these low cost housing units. Now, what was unusual about this one is they're not going to be rental properties. The people who occupy them will be getting a loan and purchasing them. It's subsidized, and if they eventually decide to sell a home, they don't get to keep everything from the sale of the home. A certain amount of it goes back into Dwelling Place, which uses it to find the subsidized future purchasers for these homes. It's kind of an unusual situation.
the owner of the Old Main and the gym is Samaritas Affordable Housing, I think it's called.
Yeah. Samaritas is they run a number of nursing homes and senior dwelling areas throughout the Midwest.
So what are they going to do with the gym?
That has been transposed as an office complex of some sort in there now.
Yeah, it's listed in the Samaritas and overall as the headquarters and service center for their general social services activities in, I think they just say West Michigan.
Yeah.
Wow.
Basically,
So they'll put another floor in there. It'd probably be 2 floors then, right?
Right, there is. Right.
Oh, there are. Okay.
Right.
Wow.
They changed the old handball courts into like staff offices and meeting areas. I'd love to get over there and just see what that actually looks like. It's far cry from what we all remember.
What gets me is there are people actually living on the 4th floor of the old building.
Oh, really?
There are apartments on that level.
Oh, okay. I often wondered about that. The last time Tom went over there, he got up to the 4th floor, and took some pictures of it before the construction got to that level. But I wasn't sure. That it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I was not quite sure whether they'd done anything with that or just kind of sealed it off. I do remember, several months back when I raised the question about what happened to the statue of St. Joseph that was, I forgot who it was, maybe it was you, Al, who mentioned that we used to be able to see the little nooks or something right there that were right off of the restrooms, the lavatories right there. And
there used to be a little trap door right there where you could get out, and behind the St. Joseph statue there. I guess that's where the maintenance could go out and change light bulbs and stuff. And when we were second-year students, Dave Laponzi and I would sneak out there at night and smoke a cigarette.
I'm sure you weren't the only ones that figured that out.
We learned it from previous classes.
That's right, by Monsignor Shaw's office, wasn't it? Or his?
Right upstairs from it.
Oh, okay. Now I understand. Yeah, I was trying to figure that out. It would be right with him, kind of, when they'd have the window kind of, parallel.
One floor down.
Well, you guys must have done some way so the cigarette smoke didn't go into his vent or something. So
no, it would generally, you're up so high the wind would blow it away.
I know. I'm just being.
Yeah. Then Jim Fogarty was forever sneaking down the stair, going through the attic on the west side and sneaking down those stairwells down to the old gymnasium auditorium to get at various things at night.
There was nothing in there.
He would use that as a way to get out of the dorm and not have to go to Monsignor Straw's apartment there.
Oh, I see.
He'd go down and raid the kitchen at night.
Wow.
But he was, the our class's person on the maintenance department, so he had a key.
Oh, he knew how to get around that. Jeez.
Yeah, he would sneak through the dungeons and.
Wow.
Oh well, our misspent youth.
It seems like I've heard from members of our class, the class of '66, that some of our class members did the same thing.
Oh yeah.
Not me, of course. The usual suspects. I think some of them show up in the in that bottom row.
It was Father Zaskowski's Mafia.
Yeah, those of us that were on the maintenance crews, we had keys to everything.
It's just amazing when you think of it, the amount of trust that they put into sophomores in high school. Had control over the whole facilities.
I always tell everybody I grew up backwards because, I was a high school freshman and I was controlling, my time. I had to budget my time, make sure I got my work done, learned how to handle my finances, all sorts of stuff like that. But I do remember being a freshman at Aquinas over there and being in a classroom with girls for the first time in a long, long time and just developing a stutter.
How did you get over it?
Very quickly. I found out they all wanted to save me. Oh.
Was that after you left the seminary track?
When we were class of 68.
Oh, 68. Okay,
And,
that makes sense.
by that time, our freshman year, we were still at the Burton Street location and bussed over to Aquinas, but they had discontinued the college program. They used Aquinas for it. And then I was, with the first group that was in Christopher House, and then Father Rose and I had a discussion about December and decided that my view of celibacy and that of the church did not coincide, and he thought I should take a leave of absence. So technically, I'm still on leave of absence.
Sort of like the old P.T. Barnum, this way to the egress.
You got it.
Yeah, we were the class of 66. We were the first ones that actually were on that. We went over to Aquinas for music appreciation and physics, wasn't it?
Yes. Both of
But
those things.
wasn't it actually art appreciation?
Well, I don't know.
Were there more girls in there, Bill?
No, they still wouldn't let us go to class with the girls. They weren't that liberalized yet.
Well, interestingly, I grew up literally right down the street
Sure.
from Aquinas College because I went to school at St. Thomas, but it was right down our street, and that was an old estate. And you're talking about all these, trap things and everything. Anyways, there was like a mansion. I don't know if it was still there when you guys were
Still
there.
there. It is,
It was a gym.
I eventually graduated from Aquinas, and we had, matter of fact, my 50th graduation anniversary reunion was in September. But that's the Low estate, and the old Low mansion is still there. That is the administration building for the college. And yeah.
We practiced basketball in fifth grade, and they had the roof there, so the kind of the roof of the gym slanted. So if you shot the ball, you couldn't get an arc on it because unless it curved right into the slant, it was kind of weird.
That's like before they built the field house at Aquinas then.
Right. That was yeah. Because I lived on the Fulton Street side. I think Christopher House, was that on Robinson Road or?
It's on the corner of Robinson Road and Woodward.
Okay.
On the northeast corner there. It was a big red brick building.
Yeah.
And then they built an addition on the side that was rooms. My room was on the lower level of the new addition, and I roomed with Louis Martin. And they used to refer to our room as the Underground Railroad because we always left our window up so people sneaking in and out after curfew could go through our room.
Well, that area kind of is interesting in the sense that I think it had a lot of springs and everything, and it went into Reed's Lake and the like. So it was.
And then Aquinas now has the Blodgett estate too.
Oh, they do?
This lake. I don't think it was a very smart move for them to buy it because they can never use it for anything other than like a presidential residence and things like that. I think they were hoping that they could eventually get it zoned for educational and expand the campus over there, but East Grand Rapids will never let that happen.
Well, yeah, but they got the hospital across the street there then. I mean, so.
They've purchased most, the old Reformed Bible Institute property they purchased years ago, and now most of those single-family residences along the west side of Woodward and on the north side of Robinson and the south side of Fulton, they own most of that property now too. So the Dominicans have expanded that an awful lot.
What are they doing with Marywood then?
They've sold it.
Well, they're using that money and putting it all into the college then, probably.
Well, basically what they've done is they've subdivided that property. The old main building at Marywood is being transformed into apartments and residences. They're going to be building some freestanding condo type units along the driveway that comes in from Fulton Street
Right.
to the main building. The other building, Aquanata Hall and the old medical building there, the treatment center they had, the rehab center they had there, those have been retained by the Dominicans and are basically homes for retired nuns and nursing homes for retired nuns at this point. So they've really gerrymandered that property to get those property lines.
So you were talking earlier about the fact that you were either in art appreciation or music appreciation. But one of the things, since St. Thomas was so close to the college, we would get, so some of them were not, in second grade I had a novice, but they were all students getting, students of Sister Kennedy or Kenneth, I think, in music. So all of our teachers in grade school, a lot of them were music teachers. And that was kind of important because when I was going in early part of grade school, the state insisted that the teachers have a certificate to teach in school. So that's how the church, the St. Thomas, kind of got around it. But they were lucky because they had this, basically almost right across the street, Aquinas College, to get teachers to teach. Because we had, when I was there, I was in the last kindergarten they ever had. So they closed that, but they still had 8 grades. And there was transition that way. And a lot of the places you talk about, there are people that I went to school with that lived in all those different areas. I mean, we all went to school with. Can I make a comment? I don't know if this will mean something. Paul, I think it'll mean something to you, but Bill sent me a picture of the St. Mary's Seminary in Baltimore. The land there was, the seminary itself, the structure was built in 1795. Think of that. I mean, it was almost kind of very close to Francis Scott Key's house and all kinds of historical things in the American experience, but also the fact that Baltimore was the seed of the Catholic Church, basically. And the area that I found, Bill sent me some pictures, which is very nice. And I learned through him that area was called Seaton Hill. And it was Mother Seton actually stayed there. They still have a place you can go and do that, which I didn't know. But that chapel, which was we called Our Lady, it was Our Lady of Clairvaux. There was a connection between the French and the Sulpicians, and they had there was a heresy like in 1750 or something like, or 1850, that said that you would not say your prayers. I mean, you couldn't say your prayers in church. The only thing you could do in church in that chapel was go to Mass. So Pete and Paul and I don't know if any of the others, Dave, I don't think you went to Sacred Heart. Right. But anyways, we would always say our prayers in a prayer hall in the major building, because the chapel was separate from the main building. But that carried over that heresy. They made that decision that they would do the separation, even in the 1960s. It was like almost 100 years later. I mean, things didn't change a lot. But they also had Mother Seton's house. Now, where she stayed before she went into her public ministry. I think she was from Philadelphia, and she was from a very rich family. I think there's Drexel, which is where there's a college in downtown Philadelphia called Drexel. But that's where she stayed. Though the chapel in her is like a convent, I guess, still stand, and they're national monuments. Now they raised the main building as if it's the same as if you were to take out, like what we know as the St. Joe's. That was a good sized building. But that's gone now. It's just a park. But the others still stand. And to give you maybe a perspective, if you, I don't know if you've been to Baltimore, but it's fairly close to where they play baseball now downtown in what's called the Inner Harbor, Baltimore. It's not too far from there, but a lot of history. And you think about why did they build St. Joe's where they did in that location? What was that like, and how that evolved into the institution it did, and now where it's going now, today.
Well,
Go ahead, please.
you look at the history of the real estate there that I saw from when I was on the planning commission, where St. Joe's was built. That block was basically a farm. That whole area was farmland, and that area, some donor donated that whole quarter to the church as grounds for a seminary.
Wow.
So that dates back to probably the early 1900s.
It'd have to, because I think that seminary started in 1917 or 1920.
Yeah,
Something.
it was around most of that area. I mean, if you look at the land plots out there, my wife and I lived at the corner of Mulford and College, which is a little south and west of where the seminary property was. The house that we lived in there was built in 1929, and that's when most of those houses back in that area were built, was in the 1920s. But that area was, like now it's like rural Walker is nowadays. It was farms that were gradually coming in, and people developing subdivisions in that area.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the subdivisions, a lot of the homes around the seminary property itself were built after World War II, in the great expansions there. So like in Winchell and like that, those houses date from the late 1940s to about 1960.
One of the things that I discovered later as I went to different places, like in Philadelphia and you look at I'm talking about St. Mary's now, but you were kind of, to me, I felt, thinking about it now, I was living in history. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you look at the way the building was built, the kind of paint, and just the architecture and things that were very similar in how it looks. If you were to go to Philadelphia and Freedom Hall and see some of that area, there was so much similarity between a lot of that we didn't realize. I mean, I think that at St. Mary's, two things that were interesting is that they had every room, there was usually two people in a room, but they had a Seda Sapientiae, so it was a statue of Mary. And then on the door, each door had I don't know if you ever seen at Williamsburg where they have that, I kind of like filigree, but they have the king's signature. Well, they had their own, St. Mary's had their own signature on every single door that was room door in the whole place. Even the stairwells looked like they came out of Gone with the Wind. I mean, they were just wide and oaks and everything else. So,
Well, the colony of Maryland dates back to about 1640.
Right.
The King of England granted Lord Baltimore
That's right.
a colony there. And Lord Baltimore was very unique in that he believed in religious freedom, and Catholics and Jews and various denominations were allowed to legally exist in Maryland, while in the other 12 colonies, legally it was Church of England.
Well, you know, I can bore you a little bit with history. I was so curious about exactly what you said. And I found out that Lord Baltimore was Irish and the king was English, but he liked him and he wanted to, it was like like in India, they have the tea company.
Yeah.
So he granted him this land. And Lord Baltimore asked that he would be able to practice as a Catholic. I mean, they got along and he agreed. But I went to the actual plantation that you're talking about that had access to the, which ended up in the Inner Harbor, right on the, there's a big, from the ocean, there, a waterway that went through there. And in that plantation, they have the some of the buildings still there, but there's also 100 feet away, because it's separation of church and state, they had a chapel built, and on it it said that you could practice your individual faith on it. I should have taken a picture of it, and that there was the chapel is pretty in pretty good shape, but it was very similar to the one that was down in downtown Baltimore. So you're very correct in that, and it was quite interesting of how all that evolved.
Just the history of that area. My wife and I, kind of our second home, our home away from home is Colonial Williamsburg.
Yeah.
Well,
you know that William and Mary thing? That's what I was talking about.
William and Mary is adjacent to the Colonial Williamsburg
right, correct.
area.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really gorgeous area down there, but the history of that whole area, we talk about old stuff here in Michigan. Well, Michigan dates from 1835. If you go to Colonial Williamsburg, you're dealing with stuff that has been there. Some of it's been there since 1604.
You know why Williamsburg was built?
Because it was a healthy spot.
Well, that's true, but it was built by Rockefeller money. You know why he built it? He built it because he was rivaling Henry Ford in. You mean the over here in
Rockefeller? Yeah.
Yeah.
Historically, in Virginia, the original capital was Jamestown, which was the first permanent settlement in this country. But Jamestown was down on the river, and they had so much trouble with fever and disease down there. I mean, half the original settlers died in the first year.
Right.
They moved the capital up to Williamsburg, which is up on the high ground on the ridge, on the peninsula there, so that they got away from the water. Williamsburg is right smack dab in the middle. It's like 10 miles from either the James River or the Chesapeake Bay, and they got away from the mosquitoes and were able to survive.
Father Guzikowski is going to give you a history test at the end of this now.
I know. Well, you got to remember, Guzzi was one of my favorite teachers, and I was a history major in college. I wound up in law school because I had a degree in medieval European history with a minor in Latin.
Well, did you see that there was a guy that's the champion at in Jeopardy?
Yeah, Latin scholar.
He teaches in Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
He went to the Pontificate Seminary, I think. But he's the current champion, or just was
He was just on last Tuesday. I think it was Tuesdays.
Okay. Yeah.
My two grandchildren upstairs attend that school where he teaches.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
they're taking Latin from kindergarten on, all the way through,
Wow. Oh, wow.
all the way through senior high school.
Holy smokes.
Armum pecano, troie qui primus abarmis.
Yeah. Scribe censius. Yeah.
Remember how we used to mash things up with those Latin plays? I remember
Were we
our
on
class,
there?
they made us do a Latin play, and somehow or other they came up with something that was basically a cross between Julius Caesar and the Three Stooges.
Well, we used to do in Spanish, it was we used to have to do original Spanish plays. And at that time it was Ponderosa was popular. And instead of a cattle farm, they had a chicken farm, the gallinas. And the reason they did that was that it was kind of mocking Monsignor Moran, because when he used to do the chalice afterwards, and he'd go like this. So they would have like do it like this, and they had the whole play running there in a chicken farm.
Sure.
I don't know if Father Roslaniak knew what was going on, but everybody else would just roar.
I think I was Father Roslaniak's most known student, since I was always in trouble and I was always up visiting the Dean of Discipline.
Oh, wow.
But the only thing I remember from Father Leo's class was Hijo de Playa.
Mhm.
Son of a beach.
On the beach.
If it takes a chicken and a half, a day and a half to lay an egg and a half, how long does it take a monkey with a wooden leg to knock the seeds out of a dill pickle?
What the heck?
That was one of Leo's favorites. That.
Oh, I just wanted to say another thing that I mentioned this to Dick Galant when we first signed on. I started going back through the issues of the recorder that we now have available online. They came from Father Mike Dan.
Danner or Dan? It's Danner, isn't it? Mike Danner?
Yes.
Oh, Dan. Okay,
Yeah.
He was from Westphalia or Portland in that area.
you're right.
Nice guy.
Yeah, somehow, and I can't, it might have been through Tom DeWalt or Jim Blanchard. About a year ago, his copies of the recorder that for a few of the years that he was there were sent over to the diocesan archives, and so he made some good copies. And one of the things I found in there was the class of 1965, which, as Dick and I were discussing, didn't have its own picture on the wall because it just would have been Dick, Frank, and Larry Christiansen,
Yep.
along with Monsignor Moran. So I guess, but anyway, in that issue, at the graduation time, there was a little feature that I had seen before. It was called Three Who Dared. And I never really paid any attention. I started reading the article, and then I realized that it was about the three graduates from 1965. And in that little thing was a picture of the three of those guys. And so I'm going to, clip it out. And, that's the only record we have of that graduating class. So, every now and then those little things will show up that it's like, never seen that before. But I'll clip that article out and send it on to. I may in fact post it on a future update or something like that. But
I think Larry Christiansen kept me from leaving the seminary on the first night I was there. I was so homesick already, and he was the prefect at my table. And he sat me down and talked to me for a while and calmed me down.
Well, Larry passed away, I found out before COVID, not too a year or so, and he went to Cincinnati, and I don't know quite what happened to him, but he was a lawyer, and he ended up in Atlanta, and he won some distinguishing, I'm not sure, recognition and awards, if you will, of helping poor and the like. And then he passed away. He was kind of well respected in the community, I think in the legal community, because of his work. He was from Pentwater, and he was he played the trumpet. I remember when he started, and so but so Frank and I are the only that I'm aware of that remaining that graduated. Now I know that Frank has run into Charlie Blanchard. No,
Belanger.
Belanger, right?
Belanger, yeah.
Okay, yeah. The only thing that I can remember, there was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. We were playing touch football, and we were out, and Charlie, this is against Dave Hooper's teams or his class. Charlie caught a pass, and he's running for a touchdown. Now, remember, we had flag football, and somehow he forgot to put his belt on or something, but his pants were falling off. I mean, you could see his rear end. So he's running as fast as he can, trying to hold his pants up. It was kind of funny. I can still see that, and yeah.
Back onto the recorders for a second. I'm going to, in the coming months or so, I was going to encourage people to go online and take a look at those issues that we have managed to save and put in another plea to, if you've got any in your basement somewhere, send them along, because we've got now, let's see, going from the oldest to the most recent ones, we have about 4 or 5, could be maybe 6 issues from the mid 50s. And that would have been the time that Mike Danner was there. And there, you'll see little references to him in some of those articles. So, and then there's a big gap into the 60s. We've got almost nothing. And Norb Bufka says that they're all there in the archives, diocesan archives. And so, but nobody, when I talked to, I forget what her name is over at the archives, she said she knows they're there, but they're all in like boxes that are just kind of sitting around in the archives, and nobody has had a chance to go through the boxes and locate some of those old issues. But I found it interesting to, because they really kind of, for those of us who weren't there, they kind of paint a picture of some of the things that were taking place at the seminary. And of course, in the 60s, when I think most of us were there, we sort of had these vague memories of of people doing different things, and who the heck was this activity? I know what got me started on that was the Christmas plays. We remember Mikado, and Terry Stewart had taken pictures of the Pinafore, but beyond that, there aren't any of the any information about the Christmas plays. I do remember Paul Banner. Where did he go? Oh, there he is. You were John the 23rd, I think. Weren't you dressed up or made up with this horrendous makeup?
That's right. But I don't know that was a Christmas play. Maybe it was.
I think so. Shepherds on the Shelf, I think it was.
It was set in a retirement home for priests.
Yeah.
And
they had the Pope there?
Well, they had all sorts of people there. I was an FBI agent that was sent in there to investigate whether there were communists in this retirement home. But I do remember, Paul.
There was one play, I don't know if this is called Shepherds on the Shelf.
That's it. Shepherds on a Shelf.
Yeah.
Yep. And somehow they had Paul show up as John the 23rd in this god-awful makeup that was supposed to add age and facial features of the Pope, but it just was incredible. So we don't have a lot of the photographic stuff that usually showed up in the recorder. So I'd love to get go back in there and kind of fill out the missing stuff from a lot of the 60s that I kind of remember stuff, but I mentioned once before that I recall an article, and I think Bill Gebhard and I were the photographers for the paper.
We used to hang out in that dark room smelling those chemicals. I remember that.
Right, yeah. And that's where things started to unravel.
Yeah, that's right. It all goes back to that.
A lot of good stories then, right?
There was one article, I think I wrote it. It was right at the time after the kind of the big upheavals in 65 and 66, where the article's title was "Faculty Breaks Grand Silence." And it was all about the fact that suddenly we were having these real formal conversations with members of the faculty that were just unheard of up until that point. So I'd love to get my hands on that one in particular. But then again, after I found the one of 1965 with the Three Who Dared, and I can't recall, was that based on a movie or something that was popular at the time?
I don't know. I couldn't answer that. I kind of, now that you said that, I kind of remember that idea, but I don't even remember the issue. I mean, I think they were really anxious to get rid of us, so it was kind of an embarrassment to the whole school.
It was usually the May-June issue of the school year that featured the graduates.
Right. That you're correct.
And the one for us, 1965, they had some of the old photos of our class members doing the kind of outrageous things at the time. But then after class of 65 or 66, I don't think there's any record that I've been able to find out of the recorder, certainly no issues of the recorder. So I think people like Mike Donnelly might remember and Jim Blanchard would certainly know if the recorder was continued during that time when people started moving over to Christopher House.
As far as I know, our class, high school class, was 68. And I've got a copy of the May recorder for 1968 because they had all the pictures of our graduating class there. And then somebody had the bright idea of getting a hold of our parents and getting baby pictures of them. Well, the back page of the recorder of that one is all the baby pictures and, preschool pictures of kids of the guys that graduated in 68 from high school. I've still got that. There were 11 of us who graduated from high school in 68. And to this day, there's 5 of us, sometimes 6, that get together once a month and have coffee. We're getting together next week.
That's nice.
There's me, Dave Laponzi, Matt Flack, Tony Foster, Paul Miliskevich, and when he's back from Arizona, Steve Finch comes in.
Do you want Mike to contact you, Bill?
This Bill?
Yes, I'm sorry.
To
I see
have
him in
who?
church. I can tell him to get a hold of you.
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay.
Another thing that, and if you get a chance to look through some of these issues, especially the 50s, there was a lot of ink given over to graduates and what they were doing at the colleges that they, the next step in the last 2 years of minor seminary, and even followed some of them on through the major seminary. So it's kind of interesting to follow. I recognize some of those names, but a lot, and mostly people who we might have encountered in our time there in the early to mid 60s. But it was kind of interesting to see how they really kind of followed along what was taking place in some of the major seminaries. The other thing that I still haven't been able to figure out, and maybe we need to talk to people like Norb Bufka and some of the old timers, there seemed to have been a running feature in there about using like the pseudonym Otto Speaks, stuff like that. And I kind of vaguely remember that, seeing those references in some of the pictures or the articles of the early 60s, but it didn't mean anything to me at the time, and it still doesn't mean a whole lot. But they did include a lot of photos of guys in the major seminaries, and that was kind of an interesting.
So it kept them attached to the seminary, St. Joe's, by kind of doing what you're saying. That seems like a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I'd love to get together sometime and go over to the archives, get a little group of guys together and go over there and start looking through the boxes that are there, see if we could find some more stuff related to the times that we were there. One of the another interesting things about the issues of the 50s was when some of the faculty members that we knew were appointed there in the 50s, and it was kind of interesting because they'll have a little biography of who they were. Father Leo was one of those that was appointed in the 50s. The Bishop Rose joined in 55 or 56, somewhere around in there. Father Goose, he came around in that time period. Father Zaskowski, I remember seeing an article about him. Again, kind of interesting to see a little bit about their history before we knew them at their days at the seminary. So, and I think the archives actually has like a little biography and sometimes a photo of the faculty members that we knew of, and just a little snapshot of, you know, their when they were ordained and their some of the parishes that they worked at, and like I said, it's kind of another little interesting side bit of information about the people that we knew of as the old guys. One of the things, I think we might have talked about this once before. I looked at, you know, Father Goose's biography, and just a little brief mentioning of him being a chaplain during World War II. And I kind of recall that coming up once or twice while we were there.
Yes.
But and I know that there was a Father Boucher from St. Joseph's Parish in Muskegon who was in the military. He ended up making a career out of it. But I don't know if there were others that we knew of that had a military experience. Does anybody recall anything about that and related to any of the other, not just faculty members, but people from the diocese that were in the military? Is anybody?
I'm trying to remember the priest's name. He was the priest that was like the first pastor of St. Paul's out there on Burton Street, Burton and Breton area. Can't remember what the name of that church is now. Having a senior.
Immaculate Heart?
Pardon?
Immaculate Heart?
No, there's a parish. There was a parish right there near Burton.
St. Paul's, isn't it?
Yeah, St. Paul's.
Yeah, well,
I can't
my
remember the
parents
name
were
of the
right back
pastor
of that. Yeah.
who started that parish, but he had been a lifetime chaplain in the Army. He did 20 years in the Army as a chaplain before he came back to the diocese. And when they built that church, when the church was construction was completed, he says, we're gonna have services next Sunday in the church. The church is done and ready for us. Somebody down at the chancery said, "You can't do that. The church hasn't been consecrated yet." And his response to them was, "I said mass for 20 years on the nose of a Jeep, and that wasn't consecrated either."
Now, one of the things that occurred to me in this whole thinking about the priests serving in the military, could they make that decision on their own that I guess I want to sign up to be in the Army and Father Boucher in the Navy? Did they have to get permission from the bishop or the diocese to do things like that? Or
they would have to get that permission from if they were a priest. They had to either get it from the diocese. A lot of the priests in the military were from various orders, and they're Franciscans or Sulpicians or whatever, and they would, they were assigned by the, back during World War II, it was a huge ministry because, you were taking millions of men out of the United States and putting them in military services all over the world, and it was chaplains of all denominations. You would find a Catholic priest who was, the chaplain in a unit, and he was not only ministering to Catholics, but to Jews and to Protestants and any religious group there was. They became very versed in all sorts of other religious denominations and religions. Because, a lot of times the unit would only have one chaplain, so it might be a Protestant minister, it might be a Catholic priest, it could be a rabbi. My dad was in World War II, and he was in the first division, the Red Arrow division.
The Bloody Red One.
Yeah, and
in Africa.
And his, of course, our family name, Greenwald, is because I've got a pig-headed great-grandfather who, being a bit of who was, when he came over from Germany, the name was Greenwald, which translates to Greenwood. And when he came through immigration, they wanted him to anglicize his name, and he wouldn't. He argued with them, and they wound up, anglicizing the first half of the name and keeping the Wald on the end.
Huh.
Now, I see that that's where God gives justice, because my great-grandfather was the world's worst anti-Semite, and he gave himself a very common Jewish surname.
Sure.
So when my dad was in the Army, he was a buck private, and they offered him a promotion to second lieutenant if he would agree to be the Jewish liaison officer for the division. And he said,
Wow.
very tempting to convert to Judaism to do it.
Holy smokes. Talk about a battlefield promotion.
It's interesting. The next big war, or the big war that we were familiar with, was Vietnam, and I can't recall any references to chaplains who, in my case, I would have been down in Detroit, from any of the dioceses that we were from or are from, and doing any kind of military service in Vietnam.
I'm not aware of anybody from the diocese.
Well, there was John Grothwald. I don't know whether he was in Lansing Diocese. Definitely not Grand Rapids.
He was in Lansing, unless he then went on to Kalamazoo.
Well, he ended up in Kalamazoo Diocese.
He was from Lansing before.
And he was pastor at St. Thomas More for 10 years probably. And Vietnam really molded him. He was he was a pacifist. He demonstrated at the School of the Americas, protesting that stuff. That he was I don't, radical isn't the right word for it, but his ministry filled that stuff, and he's had a strong ministry to the Central America area. What else was I going to say? There was something else that he certainly had contact with a lot of people.
Another priest, maybe not connected to St. Joe's, but from the Lansing Diocese, was George Zabelka. And George was a military chaplain, and he was with the unit that bombed Hiroshima.
Jeez. Wow.
And he came out very pacifist, I think even like when he retired, he kind of went into full-time pacifist ministry. I remember him leading or taking part in a walk. It might have been coast to coast in the U.S. It was a huge walk for peace. And Grothwald was always, Grothwald too, maybe, but Zabelka was always the name, and that credential of having been with the unit that bombed Hiroshima was always stood out. But he was very outspoken, very intelligent, and very solid leadership. And I'm also remembering, not a priest, but there was someone that time that was doing workshops on pacifism. And I can't remember the name, but in a religious context, in a Catholic context, actually, but not a priest. So those are the two that is, in my mind, connect with pacifism and World War II. Zabelka most especially, in my mind, anyway.
I remember at St. Joe's in high school, Carl Acapelli was very, very pacifist. And I remember I must have been about a sophomore or junior in high school, and he was a year or two ahead of me. And I mean, like, he spent his summers going around to various anti-war assemblies and demonstrations. He was kind of a folk hero with us a little bit.
You know, it's interesting. I mean, my brother knows him a little bit better, but I grew up with Carl in that area of Grand Rapids. And the interesting thing is that his father was a paratrooper in the Second World War, and his unit paratrooped on D-Day. And if you know that scene where the guy's got his chute caught in the church the steeple, well, his dad was in that group, and he was on the ground, and his dad was saved by a German medic. I don't know if you hurt his foot or not. And then he became, he worked, I think, the Grand Rapids Press. Really nice guy. I'm talking about Carl's dad and
Carl's younger brother, Tom,
right,
is still here in Grand Rapids. He was in the class behind me.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a real good friend of my brother. They knew, I mean, they went to school together. We knew their family fairly well, and they were good people.
Yeah.
But I think that Tom, the last time, or Carl, did he go to Muskegon or something? I don't know. I haven't.
Yeah, they moved over there. Honestly, I tell you right now, I can't tell you if Carl's still alive or not.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he is. He's on our list, and I think both of the brothers came to our little lunch and get together, and
that's right. Tom was there.
Most of them.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I didn't see Carl. I didn't talk to Carl.
Yes.
Hey, by the way, is Frank Marfia with us? Or
I am. I'm here, but my picture's not on the screen. Is that something you have to do, Bill?
No, I don't think so.
I can see my name, but not my face.
Let's see if I
look
hit
over in the lower left-hand side of your screen. There's a mute and a stop and start video.
Oh, you're right. The start video is off. You're right. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I thought you might have checked in and just wandered off and forgot to check out.
I actually have a question for anybody in the group. Honestly, I left the seminary. Well, I finished high school, the second year of college. So I'm in the class of 66, and then I left in 68. And I really lost touch completely with St. Joseph's and most of you guys. What happened to the seminary? When did it stop? St. Joseph stopped taking students. They all moved over to another school, another location?
Mid-70s. I can't tell you the exact
Oh, okay.
year.
So there was a point where there were no students anymore at St. Joe's. It was just a residence for priests, maybe,
it was vacant for quite a few years. And then they basically, they tried, I think at one time they tried to make it like a retreat center.
Right.
And then they eventually sold the property.
Okay.
Chancery was there, wasn't that a chancery for a while?
Yeah, there was the chancery offices for a while, and I know they used to, they tried to make it kind of like a retreat center where people would come in and spend the weekend there. I think that was after St. Lazaire's closed over in Spring Lake.
So when they sold it, they actually, I don't know if they made a profit or the sale of the property went into some other entity's hands.
Well, originally it was bought by, I can't remember the fellow's name. He's evangelist, musician, and he was, set it up as, a big, as a school and as headquarters for his religious enterprises. But that eventually kind of folded up, and that's when it's been broken up now and in its current state.
I think in between there again, though, presuming my memory about being when Bishop Britt was a classmate of mine in Sacred Heart, so I probably knew him better than the people that in Grand Rapids because his bishopric was pretty short in Grand Rapids. But at some point, the Chancery moved, to starting the new Chancery, and I suspect any monies that came from the sale of the seminary might have gone towards building the new Chancery,
Makes sense.
because at least they happened at the same time, whether the money is transferred.
And that was when
It's
they
an expensive building to heat and to, 5 stories tall. Did we have radiator heat? Did we have?
Yes.
Yep.
Radiator heat.
And in that 4th floor dorm, how cold it.
Yeah, I got
Well,
cold.
it cost a mint to get a more modern update all that stuff. So
That was
Did
another.
we have air conditioning?
No, I don't think we ever did.
no, I don't think so. Yeah,
Maybe-
they just
maybe the-
open the windows.
Maybe the priests' rooms had a little window air conditioner, but I don't think the rest of the building did.
No, I don't.
I know Father Zaskowski used to have an air conditioner because a lot of us would go visit Father Zaskowski before night study hall, so we could have a little cool air.
It's too bad that Norb is not with us this evening because he knows all the details about the ownership and of the property through that evangelical church that, and I think it was the one that you were referring to, Paul Greenwald. He and his wife had a sort of a joint ministry. And I think one of the two of them died, and the thing was kind of left in what we would refer to as limbo. And then it just went empty and sat around for several years and was people got inside it and punched out windows and
there was a divorce there too, and he and his wife were arguing over the ownership of that and a lot of other real estate that they own.
Yeah, I got over there in 2018, just bore Samaritas took over the property and walked around the outside and took pictures of the buildings or what we could see from the outside. And I recall over at St. Henry's Hall was, they had I think it was called Ellington Academy. It might have been something like that.
He had a music ministry. I mean, this guy had won several Grammys for religious music, and what they did is they converted St. Henry's into Ellington Hall Academy, named after Duke Ellington, to train musicians for religious musicians.
And then it fell into
like I said,
vacancy, and
there was some kind of scandalous divorce that took place between him and his wife, and basically a lot of stuff there kind of just hung unused and vacant while the divorce worked through the courts here in Kent County for 3 or 4 years.
I recall after the when we had that get together in 2018, the one that Norb put together, and geez, I forgot his name. Who was the historian?
Danny Morrow.
Right. And I remember Terry Stewart kind of somehow they managed to get the building open after that reunion. And some of us went over there and kind of walked through what was there at the time. And so that was the last time that I got inside. And unfortunately, my camera wasn't working well that day, so I didn't catch a whole lot of photos of what the inside looked like. Later that fall, my wife and I were over in that area, so I stopped by again and kind of wandered through. As much surprisingly, the doorway to the refectory was still open to the public. If you knew where to get in, that was how you got into the building. Remember that kind of big dark corridor that led down from the outside rear of the I went down there and was going to go inside the building, but then I had second thoughts, mostly because at that time I didn't have a cell phone that worked, and how the heck was I going to tell my wife where to look for me in case they never heard from me again. And I kind of gave up on that. That unfortunately, I had my one opportunity. I do recall in 1964, while it was still not 64, it would have been 1984, when we had the 20th reunion of the class of 1964, the high school class of 64. You remember Michael G. McKenna kind of hosted that over there for a little evening dinner, and again, that was another chance to get into the building, but at that time it was still operating as a seminary. But I had never been back inside there, and when it wasn't under construction or well, let's see, I got there after construction when I got inside the building and saw what was left of the chapel and a couple of the other spots around the area. But that was my only contact. Now, it got me I forget how we ended up on that, but they officially had a decommissioning ceremony where the bishop and I know that people that were in the class of 61, a lot of them got to this closing ceremony, and there was an official deconsecration of the building before they sold it off to that evangelical guy. And John Mullally sent along a video that he took of the outside of the building shortly after the building was officially closed. But by that time, windows had been punched out, and it was kind of in a sad state of affairs. Which even in 2018, when I got there and some of us got inside the building, it was kind of sad to see, that some vandalism had taken place. It looks like it might have been rocks or bricks or something thrown into the windows from the outside. But the inside was still in fairly structural shape. That hadn't really, that sort of stood the test of time.
Well, that building was so strong. I talked to some people who were involved in the construction of the current for Samaritas, and things like running plumbing for the units that they were established in there was, it's like hard rock mining, because some of those walls were, 12-inch thick masonry walls. There's very little steel construction in there. It's all masonry construction. So they had just a terrible time doing things like running plumbing and like that. And in effect, they had lowered ceilings so they could run plumbing above the ceilings, but you couldn't get them through, so they only had to drill a hole through a wall and not try to put the plumbing in there.
Bill, next time, just wear a lanyard and carry a clipboard. You can get into any place. That's all you need, a clipboard and a lanyard, People just
and don't look like you're snooping.
No.
If you just swagger, it's the swagger that gets you through it and everything. You're there and you know what you're doing. Nobody's going to ask questions.
No, here's a stupid question. Where did the tunnel come out into the main structure? The tunnel that
the rec room. Remember the recreation hall on the lower level there? Fairway.
So you came out of the tunnel. You didn't climb stairs. You went right into the.
No, you climbed. There were about 4 stairs that you had to climb up.
Okay.
That got you into the rec room.
And there was no heat in the tunnel. Is that correct? That's
correct.
Yep. Then it came into it came up into the St. Henry's.
St. Henry's Hall.
About the same way in that stairwell at the south end of St. Henry's.
Okay.
Right.
It was interesting, Frank, when you mentioned that where it came up. I recall that's where there was a bowling alley in that level of what we called the rec room.
But it was never a bowling alley when we were there, was it?
No. But what was left, you could see it in the floor design, like where the lanes were.
That's why that rec room was so long and skinny.
Right.
Wonder how many million 3x5 cards I won and lost playing cards in that room.
I learned a lot of card games in the
3x5 cards.
No, card games that I had never played before in my life until I was in the seminary. I never played.
The seminary served me well because when I was in college and going to law school, I used to work summers for the Kent County Road Commission on a blacktop crew. And they all played, all these truck drivers, every time the wheels stopped, they wanted to play euchre or setback. I learned them both well at the seminary.
Right.
I mean,
I never heard of euchre, or actually I never played bridge until I got to the seminary.
Yeah. Those guys at the road commission were such fish. I cleaned up good. I used to make about $5 or $6 an hour playing setback on the road crews.
Yes, Catholics, we like to play cards.
I remember I never learned how to play bridge at all. Still haven't. But I remember some guys were playing bridge down there.
I think Jerry, what's Jerry's last name? I think he's a big bridge player, right?
Jerry plays bridge, yep.
Yeah, I think I might have learned it from him.
Yep.
I never played tennis before I went to the seminary. I never played handball. I never ice skated till I went to the seminary. So I learned a lot of skills besides classroom skills.
All the stuff that molded you to what you are today.
Sure.
It's funny that you mentioned.
Have an idea when the ice rink officially became a part of the seminary? Had it been there for many years?
Yeah.
So then when we got there in
When I was there, they had
it was
one
already
every
a
winter.
historical thing.
I have some old photos that Jim Blanchard found in the archives. All they say is 20s, 30s. And it shows you the guys ice skating, and I think that got me thinking too about one of the things that I think it was Al Wahmhoff that when he was in the third year, one of the things he used to be able to do was get out of study hall ahead of the rest of us and go out there at night and hose down the rink area.
Yeah.
Does that sound, Bill Gebhard? Did you were you one of those that did that?
Definitely. Yeah, I did. I also put lists up of assigning others to do it.
Well, I can remember shoveling it. We go out there and do the conga line and shovel the rink off after it snowed.
Yeah. Well, that was a lot of fun.
I remember going out there one time with Al Wahmhoff and thinking, wow, this is cool. This is really neat to be out there with that. He had those military parkas. I think one of the things that Father Zaskowski managed to get from wherever remember he would go off and
Ionia, or
Yeah.
Jackson, rather. Excuse me, Jackson Prison.
Jackson Prison, right, yeah. So
Yeah,
one of the things
I
having
remember
those,
having to go off to Jackson Prison. Father Zaskowski took a few of us to
Yeah.
tear out lockers out of Jackson Prison and bring them back.
3,000 Cooper, huh?
Did we
the
shovel the entire complex? The snow? Did we shovel the driveway and all back?
yeah,
Shoveled the driveways and the walkways, the parking lots, everything was done
We
by
didn't have
hand.
any snow blowers back then, right?
How
No,
many shovels did they have? 200 shovels?
of that.
oh, at
Probably
least.
got them from Jackson Prison, huh?
Yeah, then they had, in the fall, we all raked leaves by hand too.
Oh, yeah.
But they had the old garden rakes, just the iron garden rakes, not the spring rakes. And Father Zaskowski would go around and teach all of us to use the back side of the rake, not the tines down,
Ah,
tines up to rake the leaves so we didn't tear up the lawn.
And
the
we,
big-
weeding the myrtle. Weeding. I never knew what myrtle was until
Yeah.
I did. I never heard of Myrtle either.
apparently that was an assignment for some afternoon.
Oh yeah, weed the myrtle.
Binka, isn't it?
I think the,
Right,
the freshmen had to do that.
Yeah.
Go out and weed the myrtle. Well, what the hell was myrtle? We were put out there, and you just kind of looked around and see what people were pulling out, and what was left was the myrtle.
We used to remember those huge carts they had. They were like chain link fences on these big carts. We dump all the leaves in those, and they dump them out and back. And that U-shaped incinerator they had back there, and they'd burn leaves for weeks back there.
I used to remember again. Al had the neatest job running that power mower. When in the spring times, he had to go out there and run the mower up in the front. That was so cool. I thought I got to do it every now and then. He'd let me do it. And then in the fall, it was they used that as a mulcher to go out there and turn over all of the leaves on that front lawn area. And again, I always thought that was such a cool thing.
So that whole front area wasn't fenced off. It was just
Oh.
plants along the edge, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was the back that had the fence with the chain link and the barbed wire on the top.
Facing inward.
Yes.
Facing inward.
They had guards up there too. Either that or dogs.
Hence, it was known as being behind the Burton curtain.
That's a pretty good.
Still there. They haven't taken it down.
Listen, it didn't stop my cousin Jim, who was 2 years behind me, Jim Marfia,
Yeah.
from leaving often to go play chess downtown.
Oh yeah.
Jim Marfia was a huge chess fan.
I guess so.
Apparently, he would leave around 9 o'clock and come back around midnight.
How do you get there? You took
You
the
know,
bus?
I never asked him. I don't know, but he said it
There was
was.
a bus stop there, but traveling at 9 to midnight downtown from Grand.
Well, maybe he got a ride from
Rapids.
somebody down at the chess club, but back. I don't know how he got there.
I had heard from somebody in this group here that stories of how Monsignor Shaw was kind of perched in some of those windows looking out toward the back, so he had a pretty good idea, self-appointed guard, who was where at various spots on the back areas there. And it seems like I had heard from somebody that who managed to get himself locked out of the building after being out for a while. Does that sound familiar to?
Wouldn't surprise me.
It wasn't anybody in this group, I don't think, but someone else told you this, Bill?
I can remember, like on a Saturday afternoon, 2 or 3 of us going out way out to the back where the pine trees were, and climbing over the fence and going up to Elger Heights to get ice cream. When we were up there, we ran into Father Leo.
Why didn't you just go down the street? There was a big dairy right there.
Well,
Miller's, wasn't it?
Miller's was there, but you had to go out. If you went out the front,
You're more visible.
You could go around the neighborhood. I don't know.
A little ice cream shop up at the corner of Elger and Eastern in those days. And we'd go up there and get ice cream in the afternoon. But like I say, one Saturday we were up there in line getting our ice cream. We turned around, Father Leo standing right behind us.
Well, did he buy it for you?
No, but he drove us back.
So what was the excitement about the glazed bread, I think on Sunday morning, breakfast?
We used to have the bread that they would put
it was baked, freshly baked.
On top of the bread.
Vanilla, like a frosting.
Frosting.
Yeah.
And so that was the one time that everybody really wanted the crust.
Yeah.
Well, see, it was also white bread rather than wheat, and they put raisins in it.
Yeah, it was like challah texture.
It was very good.
It's interesting.
The moment I ever had there was they had the nuns had to go to some sort of a meeting. And so the nuns recruited my mother and about 4 or 5 other mothers to come in and do the cooking. And we had no idea this was going on. And I'm sitting there at a table waiting, watching them bring food out. And out comes my mother and Matt Flack's mother carrying big trays of food to put on the feast table. I thought, oh, they're haunting me here.
And of course, you all remember Monsignor Moran. He watched everybody eat. Well, not all the time, but he was very careful that he didn't ring the bell until the last person had stopped eating in the refectory, in the eating area. So he'd be watching, looking around, looking this way, looking left, and most of us were done eating, waiting for him to hit the bell so that we could go on to our next effort.
Oh, he only had that short period of time, after dinner was over, before you had to go to study hall and then to chapel. And that was kind of your one break of freedom there on a weekday.
Right.
Most of us wanted to go smoke.
Well, with the high school seniors, when we were over they had us living at St. Henry's with the college guys. They couldn't figure out how to keep us from smoking, so we got to smoke too. And I remember as a senior in high school, I was smoking about 2 packs of Camels a day, and kind of decided that was not the brightest move. So when I went to college, I started smoking a pipe, and I smoked a pipe for the next 40 years.
Yeah, pipes were cool. I had one of those little things, not the full, whatever they called them. But I did that a couple of times, and I thought, yeah, the taste was just, that's what I gave up on pipe smoking.
Pipe tobacco is that if it smells good, it tastes terrible. If it smells like somebody's old barn scrapings, it probably tasted pretty good.
Over at St. Henry's, there was the smoking path. Remember that?
Yeah. Out through the woods there.
As long as you stayed on the path, you could smoke.
The other thing we used to do when we were at St. Henry's is, you have that, you could go through the mechanical room, and there was a set of doors that went out into the hollow area there. And several of us would get gallons of cider, drink about half of it, and then put the gallons of cider outside there, and we'd get hard. But then the part that was not alcohol would freeze in the snowbanks. You could pour it off. It was about 80 proof then.
So we had no elevators in that building, or was there one somewhere?
There was one.
In St. Henry's, there was one, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right.
Just the one, and it was only allowed, faculty were the only ones that were allowed to use it. But they used that to move furniture up and down and stuff like that.
I think in the main building there was just the one.
Yeah.
The south.
It was in the tower.
East, yeah, and it was the southeast one because I remember somebody saying how they got in there. It was like, gosh, if you did that, you were really daring. And they were going downward, and opened the doors, and here was a sister, one of the nuns on, and she never said anything, but it's like, ugh. You know, I got to thinking too about the whole Dominican order there. I've always, and it's maybe because in Muskegon, the Dominicans sort of sewed up all of the parishes around there for running the schools. But even to this day, I've always associated those Dominicans as being the preachers, the OPs, the Order of Preachers.
That's right.
And our experience at the seminary was they were like the Order of Housekeepers. They were the cooks, the nurse, and I'm just assuming that they took care of the staff or the faculty's laundry. I don't ever recall anything, any references to members of the faculty ever having to be responsible or doing their own laundry. So I'm assuming that the sisters did that. Does that jive with anything?
The Pope, not too long ago, was in trouble because there was a nun or some nuns took care of at the Vatican. Same issue.
Cooking and laundry.
I remember with Pope John Paul I, when he died unexpectedly. It was a nun that discovered his body in his area there, and nobody wanted to really say anything about that because somehow to have a nun in the Pope's sleeping area was something he didn't want to talk about or even think about. But I kind of remember that was sort of like one of the things that when I was looking at biographies of that Pope, like it was like he was a nice guy and everything, but as a leader, he wasn't the charismatic that other popes have been. But that was like one of the hidden stories of his passing, like part of that whole conspiracy thing. How come he only lasted a couple of months? But anyway, so it was kind of strange, different experience for me. That was the first time I ever actually thought of nuns as being cooks and nurses. And we only had the one nurse all the time that we were there, Sister Christopher.
She was there when we were there too.
Pardon?
She was there in the 60s when we were there.
Oh, yeah. That's.
I worked for her for 4 years as an infirmarian, so I liked her a lot. She had a lot of common sense.
But it must have been happening at other seminaries, because when I went to San Antonio with Jim Hannock, all the nuns, all the meals were served were cooked by the nuns, or by a Mexican order of nuns. They didn't speak any English. So actually, it was a good way of practicing your Spanish. They did all the food preparation, and I'm not sure what else they did, but so all 3 meals were cooked and served by Mexican nuns. I don't know what order they were, but so I'm wondering if that's a common practice back in that era.
I think so,
This is a little different, but related to Bill, what you're talking about. Have any of you seen the Sistine Chapel? Actually been there?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You recall that when you go to the Sistine Chapel, you go down a wooden staircase, and that was right off from the papal bedroom or papal area. So in other words, his living area, and then you just went down the steps and you came to a landing, and there was a door, and you opened the door, and there was the chapel. It was amazing to me. I mean, it wasn't a glorious facade or anything. You just walk. It could have been a staircase anywhere. The only thing that was interesting to me, or I remember, is that just before you opened the door, and it was in English, it said, "Watch for pickpockets." And then you open the door. This is true. And then you open the door, and the first thing you do is your eyes go immediately up to the ceiling, so you could see how. I mean, incredible work of art. But just the location and how that was set up, I had never dreamed it would be like that at all.
Looking back at the old blueprints or drawings of the seminary, the nuns used to live on the eastern side, like I think on probably the first and second floors. That's where they lived. Right?
Was.
Pardon?
Where the infirmary was.
Right, exactly. Those that hallway down there is, I think, that's where they stayed. But when you're getting back to back when you were talking about how it closed and that ceremony that I mentioned, John Mullally sent along a self-guided tour of a couple floor plans in there, so you could see how things had changed. And one of the things that struck me was on the 3rd floor, that was the dormitories. I mean, for all 6 classes, all before St. Henry's was opened up. And so, and St. Henry's opened, I think, in 57 or 56, somewhere right around in there. So it wasn't too long before most of us started there that that 3rd floor area had to have been just jam packed with cots and beds. And I think at the time that we were there were like 2 sets of bunks in each room.
Yes.
Well,
one set. Wait. On the east side, there was 1 set, I thought. 2 people in 1 room, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
That's right.
But the
Then
dormitory was
outside, there were like these facades, and they were painted a light green, and they I don't know, there were beds there, I think, in there. There weren't rooms.
We called those the corrals, wasn't it?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Now that's where the first year students were largely in the West dorm, the
big dormitory, right?
That was open.
There was, when I was a first year student, I actually wound up as a first year student in the corrals because they didn't have enough room for all of us in the first year dorm, and so it was there was a few of us firsties and second year students in the corrals, and 3rd year students got the rooms, and then the seniors, high school seniors, were in St. Henry's with the
college kids,
college students. What I remember is the mystery of that the old dining area. You know, off the recreation room, there was that
Right.
pair of doors with frosted glass in it. And every time they'd have a big, diocesan function where all the priests would be gathering, that's where they'd have their dinner in there. I understood there was always a pretty healthy bar in there too.
Where did we put on the Mikado? In that big basement area?
Well,
In the
the
basement.
old gymnasium was on the west.
Ah,
Mhm.
You go down the steps and have the stage in there.
okay.
Some of the older students were telling me the rules they used to have when they played basketball in there because that room was so small. For example, I mean, it was so small that a zone narrow and that a good zone defense could keep anybody from being able to shoot because the ceiling was low. So they had, remember they had that yellow stripe at about 4 or 5 foot level in the brown bricks on this all the way around in there.
Don't recall that.
If
Yeah.
it was in the rules that they had was if anything below that yellow line was in play. So to be able to pass a ball to get it inside, they used to do carom shots off the wall, like playing pool.
That's interesting.
You know, it's interesting when you think of the sports that took place there. Now, one of the features of the activities building or the gym was handball. They couldn't have played handball anywhere in the old building. So that must have been introduced once they opened up the
gym?
The activities building or the gym. And that wasn't until 55 or somewhere right around in there.
He had outdoor
You
courts.
remember on the old garage where the priests would park their cars, on the exterior, there were some wings that came out.
Yeah.
Those were outdoor handball courts.
Right. There was a handball
Oh, okay.
court.
Yeah. Now I kind of remember.
Yeah. There were handball courts there.
In Baltimore, they had these courts, but they didn't have a back, and they're almost like barns. They were huge. I think you could almost play 3 on each side, or 6 people.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
How late are you guys planning to go? It's almost 9 o'clock.
Yeah, I've got to get out of here too pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Well, once again, I don't have my 2023 calendar here, but the first Monday in February, whatever it is, if we keep up with our
Every other month.
February, the first Monday will be February 6th.
Okay. That would work.
What time did we go to bed in the old building there at St. Joe's? Was it 9 o'clock or later?
9:45 or so, I
Chapel
think.
was at
We
9
go
and
upstairs.
had like 20 minutes and
Get bed at 10 or something like that.
And I remember we didn't have screens on those windows, so if the windows were left open, whatever was outside could get in.
Have birds flying around in there.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, when do you head
Birds and
to Florida?
raccoons.
Bill, when do you head to Florida?
I'll be leaving 4 weeks from today.
Okay.
Did you have any
Very-
damage, Bill? In the
No,
hurricane?
I dodged a giant bullet. I mean, for a while it looked like that track was going straight over my roof, but my neighbor said I should say I lost a lime tree in the backyard.
Well, that's okay, right?
Yeah, I can handle that. I can put another one in.
And do you have a guest room down there? I forget.
Yes,
Okay.
Are you taking reservations?
and a second bath. So, second bathroom. It's
Everybody have a Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Same here. Yes.
Yes.
So on
Merry
our
Christmas,
next call,
everybody.
Bill, can you put on the topic on the next call? Let's plan another gathering in, I'm going to say April or May.
May.
Okay. Will you be back by
I
May?
think
I'll be
May
back
would
by
be
May.
But we've been trying, made a contact with Father Terry Stewart, and still are up in the air. Bill knows a little bit about it, and we'll see if we can, that might be part of February.
For,
was the
for a
goal.
reunion of some kind, Bill or Dick?
No, this is a follow-up suggestion from actually Dave Hooper about talking to some people that were went all the way through St. Joe's, if you recall, and just saying how we talk about the preparation and stuff there and how that kind of played out, if you will, as in the priesthood, in
Okay.
preparation. That was kind of the gist of it. And I was thinking about that and just reflecting on experiences that each of us have had, assuming that we were there for like between 4 and 6 years, and that's a long time. A lot of exposure to a liberal arts education, and from my view, it's interesting. I mean, some have been lawyers and people that have been in health services, and it's pretty close to kind of the preparation educationally that we did have. So deviation was from that kind of educational experience and discipline isn't too unexpected, I think, in the long run. That's just my observation.
Okay, guys, bye.
Yep.
Take care, Pete.
Take care,
Merry
Pete.
Christmas to you all.
Merry
Have a good
Christmas to
holiday.
everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Christmas. Yeah.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, Bill, thanks a lot.